Hello, one old-time music lover here again today, and here's a type of 78 which I don't very see often in my collection, or even out in the wild, of this style. Now, this is a champion label, as you can see. Champion labels are already kind of hard to find. I only have one other champion with some hot jazz on it, which is the thing you normally find on champion. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll find either some pre-war blues on champion, or sometimes you'll find pre-war country. And pre-war country, unlike pre-war blues, not as desirable. But sometimes you'll find pre-war country from the 1920s, early 30s that is pretty obscure, and that's the type of stuff that people like to collect, like me. This champion is an example of that. This is the song "Whistling Rufus," which is a standard ragtime, or should I say it, coon song composition from 1899, made famous by such singers as Len Spencer, Arthur Collins, and all these other ragtime or those type of black dialect songs of the time. Now, as was quite common for early country, early folk, was to basically make kind of country-ish or simple down versions of these ragtime compositions. So like a lot of early country, you'll see it'll be like country versions of old topical songs or old kind of ballads. Like, for example, in the baggage coach ahead, you saw Vernon Del Hart, and if I'm correct, Charlie Poole do versions of that. You have the song Vernon Del Hart did an excellent version of After the Ball, and so oftentimes they did lots of ballads, old topical songs, and kind of turned them into country style, as that was kind of popular because those old songs were almost the style of disaster ballads, which were very popular among country singers in the 1920s. But then you had the other side of country, which a lot of singers also did, was that also so these country singers, they did disaster ballads, they did just old topical ballads, but also they did country versions of old ragtime songs, and these would most of the time be those old black dialect songs. And for example, if I remember correctly, Vernon Del Hart under a pseudonym did the song "I Got Mine," which, if you've seen on my channel, I have a 1902 recording of that has Arthur Collins and Joseph Nadis on it, who were, as you know, Arthur Collins he was the top guy in that time period for those types of songs. And Vernon Del Hart did a country version of it. But then you also see with people like Chris Bochillian, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, Bochillian. He did one of his first 78s featured the black dialect song from 1904, 1905 called Hannah, won't you open that door? And the list goes on. I could name some that I've heard that are pretty bad title wise that I won't name. But that's kind of what country music was back then. And this is an example. This one doesn't have lyrics, because if it did, I would have to put a warning at it, because this song does feature in the original recordings, especially by Len Spencer, does feature the N-word and C-word and, you know, all the bad words of the past. But this is an instrumental selection on Champion called Whistling Rufus. I told you all that already. Ugh, I'm forgetting what I've told you all. But this is Whistling Rufus. This is an instrumental version by the Augusta Trio, which is they only made, I think, this 178, which is quite rare to see among country. Well, these are small local bands, so they weren't really massive in recording. And what's cool, so you have guitar, mandolin, and fiddle, all of the great country instruments that you could have on a recording, but also I like this that they put in here, which is kind of interesting, but also kind of helpful sometimes if you don't know exactly the contents of the 78, which would be pretty hard to know. Well, it'd be pretty hard not to know if it says guitar, mandolin, and fiddle. You would pretty sure it'd be country, but it says old time Playin, because a lot of these songs in the 1920s, they were considered as old time music by then. These songs were composed 30 years prior, almost 30 years prior. And so by the time the generation is purchasing these 78s, they would already be in their 50s and 60s. And so, or in their 40s, of course, or 40s, 50s, 60s. And so I hope you all enjoy this one. It's a great selection, and let's take a listen. And please forgive my intellectual rambling, but I just love sharing this information with you guys, especially on a 78 like this. That's kind of unusual. Something I don't really see very often in the wild. I actually didn't buy this in the wild. I bought it off of a collector who had some 78s he was selling me, some old pre-war blues stuff, and he said, oh, I have this country one, and I'm like, oh, well, I don't have anything quite like this yet in my collection, though I did recently buy a Brunswick, which I'll share on the channel after I get it cleaned up, called Furniture Man by Bill Chitwood and Bud Landris, which is very similar to this, though, but this has vocals, and this is a lot more of that kind of country that we know. Well, hope you all enjoy this, and let's take a listen.